The hidden destiny of the three trees. Have you ever dreamed about becoming something huge, rich, or famous, but life suddenly pushed you in a completely different direction? Imagine wishing to become a king's treasure chest and ending up in a dirty barn full of hay instead. Sounds unfair, right? But what if that strange path secretly led to something even greater? This is the emotional, funny, magical, and unforgettable story of three trees whose dreams came true in the most shocking way possible. On top of a peaceful green hill, deep inside a beautiful forest, stood three young trees. Every evening, when the cool wind blew and birds sang songs before sunset, the trees would talk for hours about their future dreams. They were best friends and believed they were meant for something extraordinary. The first tree was short, but very shiny and proud. He loved beautiful things. Whenever sunlight touched his branches, he would say, "Look at me. I was born for luxury." The other trees laughed because he acted like a prince, even though squirrels used him as a jumping pole. One night, the first tree proudly said, "Someday, I want to become a magnificent treasure chest. I want to hold gold, diamonds, silver, and precious jewels. Kings and queens will admire me. People will stare at my beauty and say, 'Wow, what an amazing chest.'" After saying this, he shook his branches dramatically like a movie star. The second tree was much taller and stronger. He dreamed about adventure. Every time birds flew above him, he imagined traveling across oceans. He stretched his branches proudly and said, "I don't care about gold. I want to become a mighty ship. I will carry kings, queens, and brave warriors across giant seas. Storms will fear me because I'll be the strongest ship in the world." The third tree was quiet and thoughtful. He looked at the stars every night and loved peaceful moments. Softly he said, "I don't want riches or adventures. I want to become the tallest tree in the world. I want people to look at me and think about heaven and God. I want my life to inspire people forever." The trees spent years dreaming. They watched seasons change again and again. Sometimes monkeys fought on their branches, woodpeckers drilled holes into them, and rabbits slept under them. One lazy rabbit even snored so loudly that the first tree shouted, "Can someone please wake up this hairy trumpet?" The years passed, and the trees became larger and stronger. Every morning, they prayed silently for their dreams to come true. They believed life would soon become exciting. None of them knew that destiny had already planned something very different. One bright morning, the sound of axes echoed through the forest. Thump, thump, thump! The birds flew away in fear. A group of woodsmen entered the forest looking for strong trees. The three friends became nervous. The first woodsman looked at the first tree carefully and smiled. "This tree is strong. A carpenter can use this wood." The first tree became excited. "Finally," he thought, "I'm going to become a beautiful treasure chest filled with diamonds." He almost wanted to dance while being cut down. Another woodsman examined the second tree. "Excellent wood," he said. "This will be useful for a shipyard." The second tree felt proud and whispered, "Goodbye, my friends. Next time you see me, I'll probably be sailing across oceans with kings eating grapes on my deck." Then the woodsman stopped near the third tree. The third tree became terrified. "Please don't cut me," he silently prayed. But one woodsman shrugged and said, "I don't need anything special. I'll take this one." The third tree felt heartbroken as the axe struck his trunk. The first tree arrived at a carpenter's workshop. He was excited at first. "Here comes my treasure chest," he thought. But instead of making something royal, the carpenter quickly built a rough feeding box for animals. "A feeding box!" the tree cried inside. "This smells like cows, not diamonds." Soon he was thrown into a cold barn and filled with hay. The first tree became sad every single day. Cows chewed loudly beside him. Goats climbed on him. Chickens sat on his edges like he was a chair. One fat cow even sneezed directly into the manger. The tree thought, this is the worst treasure chest in history. Meanwhile, the second tree reached the shipyard full of excitement. He imagined becoming a giant royal ship with golden sails. Instead, workers cut him into pieces and made a tiny fishing boat. The second tree almost fainted. A fishing boat, he thought. Where are the kings? Where are the royal feasts? Why does everything smell like fish? Life became difficult for the second tree. Every day, fishermen threw wet nets, muddy boots, and slippery fish into the boat. One fisherman was so clumsy that he fell into the water almost every week. The boat thought, I was made to cross oceans, not carry stinky fish named Larry. The three trees believed their lives had become complete failures. Sometimes life feels exactly like that. We pray for one thing, but receive something completely different. We ask for success, but face struggle. We ask for happiness, but experience disappointment first. The trees did not know that their greatest moment was still waiting ahead. The third tree suffered the most. Instead of being turned into something special, he was cut into large wooden beams and left alone in darkness. Days became months, and months became years. Dust covered him. Nobody admired him. Nobody even noticed him. The third tree slowly forgot his dream. One cold and silent night, something extraordinary happened. A tired man and a pregnant woman entered the barn where the first tree stood. The woman was exhausted, and the man searched desperately for a safe place. This barn will have to do, he said softly. That night, a baby boy was born. The man gently placed the newborn baby into the feeding box made from the first tree, because there was no cradle available. Suddenly, the old manger felt warmth, peace, and joy, unlike anything before. The first tree realized he was not holding gold or diamonds. He was holding the greatest treasure the world would ever know. Angels seemed to fill the night with peace. Shepherds arrived to see the child. Even the animals became strangely calm. The cows stopped making noise. The goats behaved for once. Even the sneezing cow stayed quiet. The first tree understood something powerful that night. Sometimes the greatest treasures are not made of gold. Years later, far away on a lake, the second tree continued working as a small fishing boat. One evening, a group of men climbed into the boat. One man looked calm and peaceful. Soon, he fell asleep, while the others sailed. Suddenly, dark clouds filled the sky. A terrible storm began. Huge waves crashed against the boat. The second tree shook violently. I'm not strong enough, he thought in fear. The fishermen screamed in panic. Water splashed everywhere. Thunder roared across the sky. One fisherman cried, We're going to die. Another shouted, Wake him up. The sleeping man stood up slowly. The storm continued roaring. Then the man raised his hand and calmly said, Peace, be still. Immediately, the wind stopped. The giant waves became calm. The lake turned peaceful within seconds. The second tree was shocked. At that moment, he realized he was carrying not an ordinary king, but the King of Kings. The small fishing boat suddenly understood his true purpose. He didn't need golden decorations. He didn't need royal flags. The greatest ruler in the world had stepped inside him, and that made him more important than any mighty ship. Many years later, the third tree's wooden beams were finally taken away from the darkness. But the journey was painful. The wood was placed on the shoulders of a wounded man walking through crowded streets. People mocked him. Some shouted cruel words. Others laughed. The third tree felt confused and heartbroken. Soon, the man was nailed onto the wooden beams. The third tree stood on top of a hill, while the sky grew dark. Everything felt heavy, and sad. The third tree thought, I failed completely. This is not what I wanted. But 3 days later, something miraculous happened. The world changed forever. The third tree finally understood the truth. He was standing as close to God as any tree could ever be because Jesus Christ had been crucified upon him. People across the world would remember that cross forever. The third tree had wished to inspire people to think about heaven and God. And now he would do exactly that for generations. The 3 trees each received their dream, but not in the way they expected. The first tree became the holder of the greatest treasure. The second tree carried the greatest king. The third tree became the greatest symbol of faith and hope. What once looked like failure was actually part of a bigger plan. The morale of this story: sometimes life does not go according to our plans because God has a better plan waiting for us. Delays, struggles, disappointments, and failures may actually lead us towards something greater than we imagined. Never lose hope when life changes your direction unexpectedly. A small beginning can hold a great destiny. Trust the journey, keep faith in difficult times, and remember, your story may be turning into something beautiful, even when you cannot see it yet.